Hello, I'm Bronwyn Longbourn. Writing is Rohret Buchner, author of Length of Days, the first book in the Shalimar trilogy. It tells the story of a modern American woman who falls through the Antarctic ice and into a hidden world where her coming has been foretold for 500 years. In 1531, British pirates overtook a Spanish galleon in the New World. Caught in a violent storm, the ship drifted south to Antarctica, where the survivors built a civilization on a verdant patch of earth concealed beneath the ice. Our heroine, Shara Kennington, has stepped into the adventure of a lifetime. Her resolve is tested by the clash of her modern values with Shalimar's medieval culture. Set in a place where the sun rises and sets only once each year, Shara transforms from reluctant heroine to warrior queen while battling dark forces that will stop at nothing to claim the throne. Here is an excerpt from Chapter 1. It occurred to her she might be dead. Shara awakened to the sound of screams reverberating around her in a dissonant cacophony. Everywhere she looked there was nothing, an emptiness so dark she could not tell whether she was in a place with no light or had gone blind. She had no sense of where she was or of the features of her surroundings. She remembered falling. How far? How long ago? She couldn't see any light reflected from the surface, so she must have been a long way down. There should have been light for another 100 days. The sun did not set in Antarctica until March. She called to the others, but there was no response. The silence was as frigid as the air that hung around her. In a flash of memory she was on the surface, staggering into the wind of the growing storm. She choked on tears and snow that burned on impact, not hearing the rumble of the fracturing ice until the crevasse had gouged the expanse of white beneath her. Things happen slowly at the bottom of the earth. Ice shelves build, wind erodes the surface, light shifts across the sky. But Shara's descent had been sudden and violent. She was in her world, then she was not. She tried to cry out, but her voice was a raspy shiver, hoarse from screaming. She tried to move, but her muscles were stiff from the cold. Reaching out all around her, she caught nothing but air. She lunged in one direction and lost her balance, tumbling a dozen feet to the pile of fresh powder that had broken her fall. She landed on her hands and gasped as she pulled them from the ice, flesh ripping away to expose bone. They had frozen on contact. She plunged her hands into the powder to salve their fire. When the crevasse had opened, she had fallen over the edge, clawing at the icy walls, trying in vain to find a handhold. Ice slivers had punctured her fingers and torn away fingernails. Streams of blood had poured down the walls, freezing instantly. A wave of nausea passed, but was lost to thoughts of survival. Thinking she may need to walk to where she could see light from the surface, that she had landed beneath an overhang that blocked the sun, she began to explore her environs. She staggered to her feet and took a step back, slamming into a wall of ice. Startled, she gasped, her terror palpable, overwhelmed by the feeling of being lost in a house of mirrors with the lights turned out. "Hello?" she called to the unseen surface, regaining her voice. "Is anybody up there? Please help me." Silence. She cried out again into the nothingness. Three fellow researchers had been near her when she fell. Had they abandoned her for dead? Given up on finding her? Would they be back with equipment to rescue her? They had been miles from base camp in an ice rover that had minimal gear beyond what was needed to collect samples. It all seemed so insignificant now. She sat against the wall, drawing her legs against her for warmth. Her mind grew numb as she sat waiting for something to happen. Anything to tell her whether she was sighted or blind, dead or alive. Her jaw chattered in the cold. A sliver of green appeared in the blackness. Shara blinked to adjust her eyes. Curiosity supplanted relief, and she slid off her bed of powder to examine the green. A section of it disappeared, and she realized her shadow had blocked the faint light. It took a moment to understand she was looking at light that had bent so far. All that remained of the spectrum was the color green. It was a mini green flash, the prized moment that precedes sunset. And then it was gone, snuffed out by the angle of the ice that stood between her and the surface. Thank you for listening. You can find Length of Days on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble websites.